Despite committing to LSU, Tristan Key's recruitment is far from over. We're going to talk 6 burning questions and Ole Miss's schedule as well.
Locked On presents The Portal, the daily podcast covering college football recruiting and everything NIL. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back into the Portal Podcast, where you get your daily recruiting, NIL, and transfer portal news. I'm your host, Brian Smith, longtime college football writer and recruiting analyst. Thank you for making the Portal Podcast your first listen each and every day. Today, we're going to talk all things Ole Miss football, Tristan Keys, some burning questions for Mr. Steven Willis, and we're also going to talk Ole Miss's schedule. They got 3 games in the middle there that are really difficult. So let's get started. Mr. Willis, how are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing quite well. And I don't know if you've heard this, but we're a basketball school now. It's weird.
Hey man, if you get success on the hardwood, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
So that's not my realm anymore. I still watch it, but I don't follow it like you guys do. And it is wild how good the SEC basketball season has been. When I was a kid, the SEC was Kentucky and maybe LSU or Florida was good, but that was about it.
Yeah,
now it's just polar opposite of that. Polar opposite.
Yeah. So, hey, we'll see how it goes and everything. But yeah, it's pretty exciting. And in the middle of all of this, Tristan Keys just ups and visits Ole Miss. And Brian, listen, we were talking off camera before the show started. It's like me and you were at Under Armour. We got to talk to Tristan Keys. We got to talk to prospects all over the place. And a little inside baseball for everybody that knows. All of these recruiting services is kind of like a cattle call. They go up there and it's like, let's say On3 goes up there and it's like, what do you think of Texas A&M? And Tristan Keys talks glowingly about A&M. And then they ask about Tennessee and he talks glowingly about Tennessee. And they get about 5 schools and then they get worn out asking and they move on. And those are the 5 schools that they list as his finalists. And that's the way that turned out. I talked to Tristan Keys at Under Armour after everybody had cleared out and asked him about Ole Miss. He kind of lit up a little bit, and he talked about Lane Kiffin and that offense and needing to get up to Oxford and see what's going on, and that Ole Miss was definitely going to be a factor in his recruitment. These national analysts did not mention that because they didn't know that, because they didn't ask that. And yes, Ole Miss is going to be an impact recruiter in his recruitment, and probably they're going to win out of the end. Honestly, I literally think that because of Lane Kiffin, his offense, and all of that going on, you can throw everything out the door. I don't care anything about a commitment at this point. That's like saying, hey, I'm a public lean in recruiting at this point. Yeah, I think Tristan Keys is going to end up in Oxford when it's all said and done.
It wouldn't surprise me. And it's ironic that you mentioned that. So I'll just jump into it now. I've got 6 burning questions for you. And one of them was, where do you think Tristan Keys goes? So you've answered one of the 6 questions right off the bat. For the record, Steven Willis predicts that Tristan Keys from Hattiesburg High School down in southern Mississippi is going to sign with the Ole Miss Rebels. For those that do not know, consider the following points. Tristan Keys is flat out elite. I've seen him play multiple times. Tristan Keys is a great kid. He's going to be fit no matter where he goes, but that guy is an elite football player. He's a condor. He's got the long arms, slender body, athlete in space, but he's 6'3", makes guys miss. He's committed to LSU, but as soon as he committed, he visited Oxford right at, which is awkward in a lot of ways. We'll see if that sticks. It makes me a little nervous too. And if I had to lean, I'd say based on that visit, I would lean Ole Miss's way too, because that seems odd to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
he wouldn't ever visit there again, but like it was immediate. So
yeah, it was like Geralds and McCoy vibes. He committed to LSU at the Under Armour All-American game, and then he visited LSU a little bit later on in January, and then all of a sudden, back-to-back weekends, he was in Oxford, Mississippi. After the second weekend, he decommitted. So obviously, you would think that Ole Miss has a fairly big role. They've gotten crystal balls and everything. Now, we all know that recruiting, weird things can happen, and they can happen out of order sometimes. But this Tristan Keys recruitment, I've said for months that his recruitment is looking like Caleb Cunningham's recruitment. And I'm not talking about him talking and all of the stuff with the media. I'm talking about what is actually happening. And if he starts visiting Ole Miss consistently, if he goes back to Oxford at some point, if he catches a game, yes, this is a serious thing.
Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me at all. And it is interesting how recruiting sometimes even surprises me as much time I spend with it. But when I saw Tristen, oh, he's going to wait a minute, he just committed to LSU. I'm like, okay, put the brakes on anything here. Let's hold up on what we think. But diving deeper into it, I kind of like Ole Miss. All right, Steven, let's get on to some questions here just for fun. These aren't the most rocket science. These are subjective, but some burning questions for you. Top 15 class for the Rebels, 2026. Will they finish in, pick whichever service? I don't care which one you want. Overall, will Ole Miss sign a top 15 recruiting class? And for those who don't understand why I'd asked this, they've went heavy on the portal. But Steven and I have talked about on prior shows how Lane is starting to at least slowly lean more and more into high school. It's not necessarily, can they get it? Yes, they can. It's, do they tilt that way even more this year than they have in the past? It's really the bigger part of this.
Yeah, I think they finished number 16 last year, so they were right on the cusp of it. And yes, I do think they sign a top 15 class, because if you land Tristen Keys and you land Deuce Geralds, all of a sudden your rankings numbers are going to go way up to begin with. It doesn't matter if you sign 20 or 25 at that point, because you're going to be very top heavy. And Deuce Geralds was at Ole Miss the first day of spring practice after showing up at junior day. I would think that right now Ole Miss is the favorite in that recruitment for Deuce. And I'm serious. Tristen Keys is a really great player and one of the best players in the entire country. I'm not convinced that Deuce Geralds isn't the number one player on Lane Kiffin's board right now.
Well, part of that is just player position. We both know that Kiffin's never going to really struggle at running back, wide receiver, quarterback out of high school. Those three spots, he's recruited pretty darn well. Mm-hmm. He's an offensive-minded guy. But we both also know there just aren't enough defensive tackles, period. They're just, I mean, literally, you can't teach the size and athleticism. There aren't enough of them for the P4 level, let alone G5. That makes it different. So what Mr. Steven Willis just said is 100% true. It has to be in the conversation, because I know Deuce, that's a kid that can pass rush at 280 pounds. That is not a normal trait. And he's a great kid too. I like being around him, but like his first step and his punch are legit. So I've seen him multiple times in one-on-ones. That's a nasty, nasty football player.
Yeah, we sat out there multiple practices talking about Deuce at Under Armour, where the thing was like, what we want to see, what we need to see is whenever the offense runs a power play with high-level offensive linemen, can he fill that hole as a 3 technique? That is the difference between his ranking being at number 50 or wherever it is right now, and him being the number 2, number 3 player in the country. What he does on the inside, going against high-level offensive linemen. Now, Georgia, some good offensive linemen in Georgia, but the next time that people are actually going to get to see is when he goes through the All-American game circuit again in January. And I'm assuming it's going to be in San Antonio this time, because he was in Orlando last time.
We'll see, but great kid, and he is a pass rusher, man. Very hard to find D tackles that can do that.
Yeah.
Next up, does Ole Miss win 10 or more games in 2025 during the regular season? That means no SEC title game, no bowl game. Do the Rebels win at least 10 games?
I would look at Ole Miss's schedule as it sits right now, and I would just automatically lean probability losing the game on one game. But we saw this season Lane Kiffin had the proclivity to lose a game against Kentucky, who went 0-0 or Ole Miss in 7 this season in the SEC. So if that happens, there's not much margin for error. But I'm going to say right now that he is going to win 10 games, and this is why. I think he's going to beat LSU and Oxford, because Ole Miss beats LSU and Oxford now. For whatever reason that happens. Pete Golding and everybody has it kind of going on about what to do with that offense, and it gets a little bit better and a little bit better each day. Georgia is going to be pissed off when Ole Miss faces them in Athens. So that's kind of, it is what it is.
I agree.
Oklahoma is not the Oklahoma that they were 5 years ago, but Norman's going to be a difficult place to play, but I think Ole Miss can win that game. I think if you split between Oklahoma and South Carolina, the Georgia game, I'm just going to mark up as an L, and you handle W's the rest of the way. Yeah, I think they win 10.
10 wins would be huge for them, and that would give them a chance. I mean, we'll see how the rest of the league obviously pans out, but you might be in the SEC title game. It's not out of the question because it's hard to go 11-1 in the SEC now. It's to that point. It's possible, but it wouldn't shock me if they were the number 2 seed in the SEC if they go 10-2. Certainly possible.
Ole Miss is the playoffs away from next leveling recruiting. Yeah, they have everything set up. They need that.
They absolutely do. When we come back, we're going to ask some more questions for Steven, talk some more Ole Miss football here on the Portal Podcast. Get the supplies you need from the site made for the skilled trades, Supply House. Whether you're in plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, Supply House is the reliable way to order products online. The easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product information to help you get the job done right. Plus, with a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from 400-plus top brands, you'll find exactly what you need delivered fast, coast to coast. If you need help with an order, Supply House offers expert support and industry-leading service, so you'll always talk to a real person. And for trade pros looking for an edge, their free TradeMaster program offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage. Now it's your turn. Join the TradeMaster program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Plus, use promo code SH5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Steven, let's continue on with some fun questions here. The fourth one I got for you. Does Ole Miss 2025 leading receiver, is that guy going to be the same one that leads them in catches, or is it going to be somebody different? I know there's the way Kiffin throws it around, like the guy that somebody might catch 95 balls, but the guy that catches 60 might lead him in touchdowns. Who's your touchdown leader, and will it also be the leading receiver for the Rebels?
I think the leading receiver is going to be Caden Lee. He has a chance to be the SEC superstar when it comes to catches. A very Elijah Moore type season.
Okay.
Perhaps. He is I'm going to call him the best friend of Austin Simmons. They hang out, they're in pictures all the time, they have a rapport. That is obviously a big deal in a Kiffin offense. So Caden Lee is going to have a big statistical year. But I do not think that he will lead Ole Miss in touchdowns. That person will be Desean Stribling. And somebody that's a little bit bigger on the outside handling up is going to be the touchdown leader on the team. So you might have a situation where Caden Lee has 92 catches this year, but like 5 touchdowns because of the height in the red zone and stuff like that. Once you get down there, they were going to use some mismatches. I genuinely believe, Brian, that Ole Miss intentionally went in the transfer portal and got a lot of tight end and tight end level bodies so that Ole Miss can have all 3 of them on the field and kind of seamlessly go between 10, 11, 12, and 13 personnel. I think that's the new tempo thing and kind of Lane Kiffin playing 4-dimensional chess. I think because of that, Caden Lee might end up getting lost because of the bigger bodies that are down in the red zone. But I think Caleb Odom has a chance to really be a weapon down in the red zone. I think that Desean Stribling obviously he can do some Trey Harris level things. He's not Trey Harris, but he can do those type things. And when you look at Harrison Wallace on the outside, he could be the deep threat, the yardage leader going on. So I think this offense, this wide receiver room is actually going to be better than it was a year ago. Now, you do not have a Jackson Dart, although I love Austin Simmons as a player, but you do not have Jackson Dart. But at wide receiver room, the pieces that they have, I mean, they picked up wide receivers from Wake Forest and West Virginia that nobody's even talking about at the moment at wide receiver. I mean, there's a lot of pieces in that room. And then they added Winston Watkins and Samari Reed and those dudes coming in. So this wide receiver room has the chance to be extremely talented and very varied going into the season, which might be a new thing for Lane Kiffin. But it is worth remembering, Brian, that Lane Kiffin actually was the coach that recruited and put together that Alabama wide receiver unit that had Jerry Jeudy and all of those guys. So maybe that's something he's basically constructing in Oxford right now too.
Great answer. Next up, let's talk about something that is a little bit related, but it's the position that gets the ball when the receivers don't. Running back. Will the Rebels have a true number one running back this year, or is it going to be more of a committee?
That's a good question. That's a really good question. Now, if you go by potential, there's a chance that a Quinshon Judkins level back emerges, and that's Kiwan Lacey. Lane Kiffin loves him. He says he has a chance to be elite. That's what Lane Kiffin said this spring. Okay. He has a chance to be elite. But if he doesn't come out to be the true number one, because when he went to Missouri, he obviously transferred to Ole Miss. So there's some steps that have to happen before he gets there. And you have Logan Diggs, who by all accounts seems to be completely healthy from his surgery after he left LSU. So you could see a committee approach by the Ole Miss Rebels because of Logan Diggs and Kiwan Lacey. And do not forget Shakai Mills-Knight. Whenever he arrives in June, he's going to completely reshape that room because of what he can do. So I'm going to go with committee right now. But if you're going to have an elite back, it's probably going to be Kiwan Lacey.
The next one is arguably the most difficult because it's Suntarine Perkins is a special player that you and I have talked about for over a year. We both love him. So do the NFL draft experts. That's a whole other conversation. But if you take Perkins out of the conversation and the Rebels are to make any form of a run to even get in the conversation to make it to Atlanta, what is the player that not only needs to play well on defense beyond Perkins, but just can't get hurt for the Rebels to make it to Atlanta?
That's a really good question. I'm going to mention Xavion Harris.
Okay.
He is the freak on that defensive line that somehow that people say every time they see him, he looks like he's gotten taller. He's 6'6", 6'7", 330 pounds, just a monster in the middle of that defense. And he's going to allow that Ole Miss defensive line. And nobody's saying that they're Walter Nolan and Princely and Ellen or Jared Ivey up front next season, but that's going to allow them to be pretty good because you're going to replace them with a Suntarine Perkins, a Cam Franklin, a high school recruit that they developed, William Eccles, who we talked about him in the past as well, Jam Brown. This is a homegrown defensive line group that Lane Kiffin has finally recruited. All high school players, no transfer portal, and then you have Prince Will Amonmiel. Then when you have Deshaun Womack, those guys as well supplementing in. I think Ole Miss's front seven is going to be pretty good. They're not going to be 2024. Nobody needs to expect that. But they are going to be at the very top level of the SEC, and that's good enough for you to push forward with as good as this offense has a chance to be.
I think that the defensive line at Ole Miss is one of the reasons that, I don't know how long ago it was, maybe a month, I said there's a chance over the next 3 to 5 years that Bama doesn't have as good a run as Ole Miss. I'm not sold on their staff and how they recruit the South is my concern with Bama. But Kiffin has finally started to get more defensive players that were highly coveted. We all knew that he was going to get offensive guys. That wasn't really difficult. That's basically low-hanging fruit to pick. But at the same time, if you can get a couple out-of-state kids and you can keep more of the in-state players, which the guy like Eccles, et cetera, you're talking about, all of a sudden Ole Miss is a different football program. They've just never had enough depth in the trenches for me watching them when they get into the latter stages of a season for me to feel comfortable that they're going to be able to battle through like multiple weekends or LSU, Tennessee, teams, even like Arkansas or something. It doesn't matter. All these teams power. It's hard.
That Georgia, Oklahoma, South Carolina stretch.
Oh, that's not friendly, brother. If you're thin at D-line, Georgia's going to soften you up no matter what. Then you got two more physical football teams. Mm-hmm. If they had not recruited the way that they have, Ole Miss would have zero shot at making it to Atlanta. They'd be a 7-5, 8-4 team. Mm-hmm. That's just reality. But it's not Kiffin's offense. It's his ability to get a staff together that has recruited defensive linemen at front seven, like Perkins again. That's until otherwise proven, in my opinion, he's their best defensive player. I don't think anybody's going to argue that. If you give guys around him some help if this player's good, this player, like there's nobody they can just key on, and then they can't just always double team Perkins like on a special play, and Ole Miss can kind of unleash. They could be a top 25 defense overall. And we both know, again, for those of you who have not seen Austin Simmons, I'm telling you, he can spin it. He's going to have some big games this fall, and they'll score points. That I'm already steadfast with.
And Ole Miss, the way they attacked the transfer portal this year kind of gives you an idea of where their thought process is. They did not recruit defensive linemen on the transfer portal. They got a couple of ends and a couple of edges to bring in. But defensive line, they felt pretty good about, and they got linebackers that have athletic ability, like Andrew Jones coming in, somebody that can run sideline to sideline. That is because they know that what they have, the offensive linemen are going to be kept off the linebackers and allow them to be able to run, and they're going to be able to attack. What Pete Golding picked up from Zach Arnett, I called Zach Arnett the linebacker whisperer, because no matter what he's doing and who he has, those linebackers always are up there in sacks and tackles and all of that. He just knows how to put them in position. He did the same thing with Pooh Paul last season at Ole Miss. Pete Golding has picked up some similar traits in those linebackers. And looking at that, I think Pete Golding thinks that front seven is going to be pretty good.
I would agree wholeheartedly. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about Ole Miss and their title run. A couple more key questions for Steven. That is next here on the Portal Podcast. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and start building your actual wealth. Something that's really great about it, you realize just how much you're spending on the food delivery and all the little things that add up. It's also easy to collaborate with your partner to keep your money in one place so you know how much you're spending on everything, and you can also set goals. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. Steven, we've talked about the front end of the schedule, the back end of the schedule, the offense, the defense. Are there any other little things that you think they need to do between now and the end of fall camp to start prepping for a run? And I know how Kiffin, I've studied him long enough. He's looking at this from a long-term investment. What do they have to do to get it Atlanta? Like, is there anything else they're missing? Is it something special teams wise? Is there anything else with the run game? Like, anybody in particular that we haven't covered yet?
It would be interesting to see what they're talking about in the defensive back room at Ole Miss.
Okay.
What they're talking about. If you told me they were active in the portal, that's the position I think they're going to be active in. I love Keon Young, Cortez Thomas, LaDarian Clardy, those guys. I like Sage Ryan. Those players, they're safety candidates that are in that room, but they have to show out over the next, 10 or so practices. If Ole Miss doesn't perform well, you might see Ole Miss hit the transfer portal pretty hard. That's the position. That's the linchpin spot for Ole Miss. The keystone for Ole Miss making it to Atlanta is they figured out the defensive back room, because there's not that super elite guy sitting there right now. Chris Graves is missing spring because of surgery. There's some pieces that are not really showing right now, and nobody gets to see it anyway because they don't broadcast anything because of that stupid transfer portal window right after the spring. But that is the position that I think that Lane Kiffin is focusing on. That is what Pete Golding's focusing on. That is what Brian Brown is focusing on. Those positions in the defensive back room are going to be extremely important. Like right now, it's Patrick Broomfield, it's Mason Dunn, some young guys getting a lot of reps. Ole Miss is going to know exactly what they have before the spring transfer portal window opens and before fall camp starts.
I think it's a big factor in college football in general. You mentioned the safety position. It's gotten a lot harder because teams spread. Well, Lane does this. They spread you out, and your safeties, you may be in quote unquote zone defense, but the way they line it up and the way they attack vertically, you're really not in zone. You're basically in man at that point because they're coming right at you 100 mile an hour. So if you don't have safeties that know their positioning and understand what's going on around them, it doesn't end well. Yeah. And the SEC at receiver now is just incredibly talented, probably the best league by a pretty good margin, I would say, at the receiver position. So each week, even if you're playing a team you think is going to finish 6-6, if you screw around on one play and you get burned for 6, that can be the difference between going to Atlanta or sitting at home watching that game like everybody else. And it can come down to something that small.
That happened in the Kentucky game.
Yeah.
It was on fourth. It was a 4th and 12 Hail Mary pass down the sideline that Kentucky made a play. That was the difference between Ole Miss making the playoffs and not.
It's amazing how that happened. Like the littlest things. That's why coaches harp on the goofiest little stuff in practice. And you see these weird clips on the internet, but that's why. A mental error cost that from happening. There's no way around it. He probably should have been sacked. That's another point to that. But at the same point, you can't have a guy open on 4th and 12. That can't happen. So anyway, Steven, tell everybody where they can find your work, my friend.
Oh, we are on the Locked On Ole Miss podcast channel on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast. You can also check us on the Tegna stations that they have as well. And I think we have an app coming right now as well sometime in the next couple of weeks. You can also catch Brian on the Locked On Ole Miss podcast Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays starting April 14th while I am recovering from a little bit of a surgery type situation. So if you like Brian, you can follow him on over to the Locked On Ole Miss podcast as well. And Brian, we do appreciate that. And I know my fan base that's on my site, they're very fired up about you doing that.
Well, I appreciate it. I like talking about football in the state of Mississippi, especially the high school ball. I think it's vastly underrated. I might go see Tristen play this year. He plays for a really good program in Hattiesburg. So there's a lot of things to talk about in the state of Mississippi, and it deserves more coverage in general. And then, of course, the Rebels, they got a chance to make the playoffs this year, and they got a quarterback I know. So there's a lot to talk about. I will definitely talk a lot about Austin Simmons while you're gone. I can assure everyone of that. He's a good kid and just uber intelligent. It's incredible. You can find my podcast, The Portal, the same places that you find Steven's, all the Fire channels, YouTube, Apple, Spotify, Odyssey, Sports Spider, whatever you want to find your app, we got it there. So make sure you subscribe and like and share this podcast. We will see you again soon here on the Portal Podcast.